Well, welcome to the chapter on the brain. We're going to start off by looking at the main parts. The brain can be divided into 4 main parts. And we'll outline each of them and then write some notes on it. So we're going to start with the cerebrum. It's this big part up here on the top. This is the conscious part of your brain. So remember when we were talking about somatic and autonomic and visceral? This is the part that deals with your somatic motor and somatic sensory. So it deals with all of the sensory information that you are consciously aware of and all of your voluntary movement of your skeletal muscles. This is also the part that sets humans apart from other animals. You have a much bigger cerebrum with your body size than other animals do. And the cerebrum is divided into 2 hemispheres. So it has a right side and a left side. And each hemisphere is divided into 5 lobes. And we are going to go over the lobes and the hemispheres later in another video. For now, we're going to go ahead to the next part, which is the cerebellum. So that's this little part back here. And here you can see it in cross section. This part is what coordinates your movements. The fact that you can walk without falling down, the way you move, that's all coordinated through your cerebellum. And just think of a drunk person. The way a drunk will stumble and fall down and bump into things, that's because alcohol inhibits the cerebellum. So compare a sober person to a drunk person to get an appreciation of what the cerebellum does. And it receives proprioceptor information. These are receptors in your muscles and joints. So proprioceptors are sensory receptors in your muscles and joints. And they keep track of where your body parts are. This is something you take for granted. You don't have to really think about it. It's just always been like that. But you know where your foot is right now. You know where your arm is right now. That's your proprioceptors reporting to your cerebellum. So they send info about the position and movement of all your body parts. So for example, when you're walking, you have to coordinate your right leg and your left leg with each other. If they don't stay coordinated with each other, you'll fall down. So your cerebellum is keeping track of where each leg is and making sure they walk in coordination with each other. The next part we're going to look at is the diencephalon, and that is inside. So this area that you can only see in cross section is the diencephalon. And the diencephalon, we're going to look at 3 main parts of it. So first we're going to look at the thalamus. The thalamus is this area right here. And for the function of thalamus, we're going to go over that in class. So just leave some space here in your notes to write in the function of thalamus later. Then we'll go ahead to hypothalamus. So look at your root words. Hypo means below. So the hypothalamus is just below the thalamus. This area is the hypothalamus. This is a part of the brain that's going to come up a lot in future chapters. So we're going to have a lot of stuff coming up next semester with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus has 7 jobs. It is in charge of hunger. Whenever you feel hungry, that's your hypothalamus. Also thirst. It's making sure you have enough water in your blood by making you thirsty if you need more. It regulates your body temperature. So like when you're hot and you sweat, or you're cold and you shiver, that's your hypothalamus. Also, when you're sick and you have a fever, your hypothalamus gives you a fever. It regulates your circadian rhythm. Think about if you get used to waking up at the same time every day and then you don't actually need your alarm clock anymore. That's your circadian rhythm. It keeps track of day and night and when you should sleep and when you should be awake. It's in charge of emotional behavior. When you say that you love someone with all your heart, you're lying. You don't love anything with all your heart. Your heart is a muscle that pumps blood. You love someone with all your hypothalamus. It also controls many of your hormones. Not all, but there is a list of hormones that we'll cover in chapter 17 that is controlled by the hypothalamus. And finally, it controls some of your autonomic nervous system, which is what we'll cover in chapter 15. And you did get introduced to autonomic in chapter 12. Then the next part that we have for the diencephalon is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is right under the hypothalamus. So this part here is the pituitary. So the pituitary secretes hormones into your blood, and it does so under the control of the hypothalamus. So this goes along with that number 6 function of the hypothalamus. It controls everything that happens in the pituitary gland. Then the 4th part of the diencephalon is the pineal gland. It is toward the back. So right back here is the pineal. This is what makes you sleepy. The pineal gland secretes melatonin. And this makes you sleepy. You may have heard of this. Melatonin's pretty widely known. You can even go to the store and buy a bottle of melatonin pills to help you sleep. And it does this in response to darkness. So this is why we tend to sleep at night. When it's dark out, your eyes sense that darkness, and that stimulates your pineal gland to secrete melatonin. This is why you might feel sleepy and want to take a nap on a cloudy, stormy day. All that darkness stimulates your pineal gland to secrete melatonin, and you just want to curl up on the couch and take a nap. There is also, you may have heard of seasonal affective disorder. It's abbreviated SAD, SAD. This is when people can actually get depressed in the winter because they have too much melatonin. The winter tends to be dark. The days are short and they tend to be overcast. There's not a lot of bright sunlight. And without that bright sunlight, your pineal gland will just keep secreting melatonin. And so some people find themselves just very sleepy and run down in the winter. And the treatment for that is to buy one of these bright lights. So if you find yourself being tired and run down a lot in the winter, you might try sitting in front of one of these lights, and it gives you that brightness and it shuts down the pineal gland from secreting too much melatonin. All right, then we can move on to the brainstem. So this part is the brainstem. This is also sometimes called the reptilian brain. This is the most basic, rudimentary part of the brain. So it's called the reptilian brain because even reptiles have it. So I said the cerebrum is what sets humans apart. We have a really big, high-functioning cerebrum. The brainstem is pretty much the same in every animal. So there's not much difference between your brainstem and a turtle's brainstem. And we can look at the brainstem is three main parts. So up here at the top is the midbrain. And there are a lot of functions of the brainstem. We're not going to go over all of them. We're just going to keep this pretty basic and simple. The midbrain has your auditory and visual reflexes. When you were a kid, did you ever play that made you flinch game? Where you go up to one of your friends or your brother or sister and you act like you're about to punch them, but then your hand stops just short of their face and they flinch. And then if they flinch, you say 2 for flinching, and then you get to punch their shoulder. That's your midbrain doing that. Or like when you hear a loud sound and you jump, that's your midbrain. It gives you those flinching and jumping reflexes to something coming right at you or a loud noise. Another part is right here. That is the pons. And like I said, there's a lot of functions here, but we're going to keep it pretty basic. One of the main things your pons does is it makes breathing smooth. You can quietly inhale and exhale. You don't even notice you're doing it most of the time. That's your pons making that nice and smooth and quiet. Sometimes people can get damage to the pons and then their breathing is kind of erratic. The third part is right here, and this is the medulla oblongata.
Alligators are abnormally aggressive.
I know the answer to this question. Raise your hand.
Anybody? Anyone? Yes or you, sir?
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Your mama said it. Alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth and no toothbrush. Wow. Anybody else? Yes or you, sir?
Alligators are aggressive because of an enlarged medulla oblongata. It's the sector of the brain which controls aggressive behavior.
That is correct. The medulla oblongata.
But Mama said...
The medulla oblongata is where anger, jealousy,
So despite what the Waterboy and Colonel Sanders say, the main functions of the medulla oblongata are going to be autonomic control, of three main things. Your heart. Now, a note here, your heart beats on its own. It does not need your brain to tell it to beat. But your medulla oblongata can tell it to beat faster or slower. It also has autonomic control of your breathing and the diameter of your airways. And your blood vessels, when your blood vessels dilate or constrict. Now, there are also hormones that can tell your blood vessels to dilate or constrict. So your medulla oblongata does control blood vessels, but it's not the only thing that controls blood vessels. In addition to this autonomic control, your medulla oblongata can make you cough, sneeze, gag, and vomit. These are all life-saving functions. So coughing and sneezing are to keep your airways clear so that something doesn't clog up your airways and make you suffocate. Gagging and vomiting are so you don't poison yourself by eating something that's bad for you. So if you try to eat something that's going to make you sick or kill you, you'll gag. And if you do manage to get it down, your medulla oblongata will try to make you vomit it back out and protect your body from that. So there is an overview of the main parts of the brain. And then we're going to do more detail on the cerebrum coming up in future videos.